Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Channing Unitarian Universalist Church. It's been a while since I did this. We're glad you joined us for worship today. Whoever you are, whatever your theological, spiritual, political, sexual, or racial orientation or gender identity, you are welcome to worship here and become a part of this community. I know Julie has an announcement she wanted to make.
I was going to make this announcement for anybody who wasn't here last night, which is 3 of you, and 1 of you knew about it. I just wanted to make the announcement that last night at the Chinese dinner, the Prudential Committee and officers dedicated the church hall in Danny's honor for all of the decades of taking care of the building and making the church run secretly behind the scenes. So that hall is now officially named Howland Hall. So next time you see him, make a big deal about it.
He was very pleased. And so was his family. They were
Yeah.
very, very thankful.
He certainly earned it.
Mhm.
Awesome. Any other announcements?
Kind of in addition to that, we had our Chinese dinner last night. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people came. It was good to be back after a few years after the pandemic. We do have some takeout meals if you want some lunch or leftovers available for purchase after service, and we have lots of goodies to eat after. So if you want to eat some desserts and then take some of those home too, we have lots of good snacks for coffee hour. And we don't have a full total yet because of expenses and the few meals that we sell afterwards, but it looks like a very profitable night. So
Awesome. It was flexible. Any other announcements?
Coffee house coming up, April 15th, 8th. Yeah, the 15th, there won't be anything here.
Okay.
So, on the 8th, Pretty Sarah, it's a folk Americana trio, so we'll back to our roots.
Any other announcements?
I have a second one, sorry. Also in April coming up, the 22nd will be our annual yard sale and bake sale. So if you want to do some spring cleaning around the house and bring some stuff in, you can certainly do that. And then bake sale items we can take like the night before. So keep that in mind.
One last one.
Yeah.
There is something on April 15th. The town is doing its annual cleanup day. So a bunch of folks from Channing are going to participate. So if anybody wants to walk around and pick up trash with us, let me know. And we'll meet together as a group.
Are we doing that instead of service? Oh wait, that's
It's a
the
Saturday.
Saturday. I don't know where I am. Who are you?
Would you like to do this? Later. Any other announcements? Every time I say that, there's a few more.
I swear that's it. I mean,
That's it. Great. Our opening words: come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. Please stand as you're willing and able. We'll say the words found in your order of service. Kindling this flame of our liberal heritage in our childhood community let us open to the presence of the sacred. And our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is sacrament, and service is prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus to be covenant with each other and with God. And our opening hymn is number 38, Morning Has Broken. It's one of my favorites. And we sang it at my father's memorial service, which was a nice, sad, but also a lovely experience. So I like to sing this song as much as I can. So the reading this morning, Radishes Smile and All Beings Rejoice, is from a book, it's a cookbook called Tomato Blessings and Radish Teachings by Edward S.B. Brown, who's a cookbook author and also has a lot of spiritual teachings he sprinkles throughout. Of course, I left the book at home, but I'm going to summarize what the reading says. And the point is that, so in this piece in the book, the author is invited to dinner at a chef's house. And he's excited because, he's a chef himself. He loves going to people's homes where they're also chefs and they can make, perhaps elaborate meals and share. He also mentions he brings 2 bottles of wine, but knows that they may not get drunk depending on if the chef has a plan for. And he and his spouse go, and sure enough, there's some wine that the chef has already. So, he's fine to not drink his wine that he had chosen. And to let the chef share what he had planned for the evening. And then they sit down to the appetizer, which is radishes. And it's just simple radishes. I believe they're cooked slightly, and there's 3 different dippings or sauces that you can do. There's a sauce, like an aioli type sauce. There's salt and there's butter, or you can try the radish simply. And he explains that, sometimes in the act of expecting an elaborate type of thing, sometimes simplicity is actually the best. And that he tried a little bit of the radish just plainly, a little bit with some of the butter, a little bit with the salt, with the sauce, and then each bite was sort of a new experience. And so something so simple can bring you so many different facets and aspects of the same thing. So that was the reading. Which I left at home and realized 3 minutes before the service, so I couldn't put that. So we'll now have an opportunity to share joys and concerns that we'd like everybody to lift up with us. And please just raise your hand to share them with everybody.
Somehow didn't have to look at my phone. Somehow in this week, my aunt did a face plant on the concrete floor. Displaced her nose and her niche. Another one of my aunts, her sister has stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
What are your aunt's names?
So, my aunt Lynn. Is the one who just placed her nose, Aunt Billy, and her sister Shelly. Stage 4 cancer.
Lit a candle for Lynn, Billy, and Shelley.
About 5. First is longtime friend of my family, Mary, whoever is in the hospital with a long list of things they're looking into, so. One for Paul and Carolyn Norcus, who are both in rehab together. And then, of course, one for their son, Billy, who's home by himself while they're there. And then 2, and on a better note, one for my friend Kim, who a few weeks ago was attacked by a dog. He's now home and starting physical therapy and went on her first out of the house outing, and she's beginning her recovery process.
If you don't know, she lost her foot.
Yeah, she lost her foot.
Candle of joy last night. Well,
Sounds like it might have been a really late.
Give a little thanks for everybody who cleaned up, especially Danny's crew. They do a really good job of helping put away all the tables and chairs immediately, so it's a lot less work for us. And joy for the new dedication of Holland Hall.
for a lot of events in Double H.
I'll light one last candle for all those joys and concerns. That people keep with it. Let us now enter into the spirit of prayer and meditation. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see there the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. Fire of the Spirit, life of the lives of creatures, spiral of sanctity, bond of all natures, glow of charity, lights of clarity, taste of sweetness to the fallen, be with us and hear us. Composer of all things, joy in the glory, strong honor, be with us and hear us. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. Freely have we received the gifts that minister to our needs of body and spirit. Gladly we bring to our church and its wide concerns a portion of this bounty. We will now accept the offering. Please stand as you're willing and able. Or that you- My dad read. That was a part of his speech. He read cookbooks for the introductions, for the little anecdotes and tidbits of information that were peppered throughout, but mostly he read them for the recipes. After he died in 2003, my mom and I found piles of saved newspaper and magazine clippings. They were all restaurant reviews and recipes. And my mom also does this. I asked her recently for a recipe for her vegetable lasagna, which I remember being really good. And she sent me photographs of the newspaper clipping and 3 pictures going down. So when I was actually making the recipe, I just looked between the 3 things. My dad also had an amazing memory for food. We traveled a lot, and when he told stories about our trips, it wouldn't be about the sights we would see. It was the restaurants at which we had eaten, what he had eaten, and a lot of the time, what my mom, my brother, and I had eaten as well. Not only did my dad enjoy eating food, he really enjoyed cooking it too. His mother was originally from Virginia, and he had learned many Southern-inspired dishes from her, like Spam and, well, actually, and scrapple comes from Pennsylvania, but much of my father's knowledge came from the hours spent observing his father-in-law at work. My grandfather was an immigrant from a small village in the mountains near Parma, which is where Parmesan cheese and prosciutto come from. He worked his way up in the kitchens of New York in the teens and 20s and opened his own Italian steakhouse, Pietro's, in Manhattan in the early 30s. Still there, though it's not in our family. well, it's my uncle's wife's family who has it. So it's sort of family, but not like family by name. From his years observing my grandfather and reading recipes and eating all over the world, my dad had compiled a rich encyclopedia of food in his head. In all the years I watched him cook, I very rarely saw him use a recipe. All he needed to know was in his head from the recipes he had previously read. The few times he did use recipe, it was usually when he was baking something, and that was actually usually from a box mix. I think my dad didn't enjoy baking as much because of the implied strictness within baked goods specific measurements. He didn't like the restrictions that he felt were placed on him by these measurements. The perceived strictures of baking did not fit into my dad's food. For the many dinners at our house with friends, my dad would pull on his knowledge, add a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and delight friends with meals that could take a good 2.5 hours or more to finish eating. These were not lavish, complicated meals. My dad was good at making simple dishes prepared carefully with quality ingredients. From the hors d'oeuvres to appetizers and the main courses, everything had been well thought out and organized days in advance. One of his favorite appetizers to serve was a Ritz cracker with peanut butter. He would parboil some bacon and then put a little bit of bacon on top and then broil it quickly to get crispy. It was really good. We also did like shrimp cocktails, but and other things. He really enjoyed this whole process, and everyone who shared these meals at our house knew it. We never had a dinner without everyone laughing and talking throughout the entire night. That was also a part of his food ritual. When he died at the age of 60, my dad had a collection of over 500 cookbooks. He liked to tell the story of the one summer he went to the annual used book sale under a tent in one of the mall parking lots and came home with 65 new additions to his collection. When he came home very excited about his new purchases, my mom did not react with quite as much enthusiasm as he did. Like many other families may have, there were bookshelves in the family room and a couple other rooms of my parents' house. They were full of cookbooks. I used to have more than 100 cookbooks, 18 of which my dad bought for me at the used book sale the summer that he had died. Of my collection, about 40 focused on dessert and bread making. Since my dad didn't really bake, that task fell to me. Since then, I actually donated a section of some of these books of my dad's to the Schlesinger Library at the Radcliffe Institute, part of Harvard, because they have a collection of cookbooks. And so there's a few in there that have a little dedication to my dad. Like my dad, I love to read recipes and combine aspects of different ones to make my own unique recipes. Unlike my dad, I still bake with the recipe in front of me because it is true the chemistry of the ingredients makes proportions a little more important, but there still really is a lot of variety within baking. Part of my food ritual involves reading through my cookbooks or browsing my favorite recipe websites whenever I feel like baking to find a recipe for something that I want to make. Then I might change some ingredients around or alter the shape of the product if I feel it would be good in the other way as well. The actual process of baking is very relaxing and enjoyable. I get to taste everything as I go along. But my favorite part of baking is the reaction of the people who get to experience what I bake. From the anticipation in my house that accompanies the smell of something from the oven to that first bite and reaction, I love being able to share my products with others. That what I have made can give people so much joy really makes me happy. That is the most important part of my food ritual. While this food ritual is not overtly religious or spiritual, to me, the fact that the act of baking results in something that makes someone else happy makes it religious or spiritual, since happiness is an important part of my spiritual. In her foreword to Brother Rick Curry's book, The Secrets of Jesuit Bread Making, another cookbook, author Laura Spuviel beautifully states my similar sentiment on this topic. It may be that there is no great difference between talking about victuals and talking about religions. In nearly all faiths, the divinity is made present in what we ingest. In fact, no one would deny that an obligatory rite of almost every religion is the moment of eating or drinking with the deity, eating and drinking in honor of the deity, or eating and drinking of the deity himself or herself. In some measure, the profound meaning of nourishment has to do with our thirst for eternity as it is encoded in our daily sustenance. That may be why almost all our gods have chosen to leave a sign of their presence in foodstuffs. In this sense, we eat and drink for life, and in order to have life. In enjoying our food, we experience flashes of eternal life. The act of eating is not merely fundamental in itself. So too is the ceremony of preparing and sharing it. The ritual ceremony that takes place around the table is an act of profound and ancient religious significance. It is not gratuitous, therefore, that some religions use the evocation of the supper or the fraternal gathering around the table to symbolize their most important mysteries. How then could the preparation of bread not have special meaning? In Christian cultures, the presence of bread recalls the passion, death, and resurrection of the Son of God, whose body is described by the celebrated Mexican Baroque poet Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. In its niveus manifestation, avails itself of the grain of the wheat, which is transformed into his flesh. Dividing the bread was the perfect sign for the resurrection of the Messiah. Through the ritual of communion, the absent master, in the form of bread and wine, returned to nourish his disciples spiritually and materially. That is why religious communities have always valued the importance of the partaking of food and drink and have considered it a sacrament, the actual presence of God among man, and have developed subtle and wondrous methods to symbolize the many ways in which they may affect the loving act of preparing nourishment for the pleasure of their brothers. I'd now like us to do responsive reading number 727, and then I'll introduce our activity. So please find 727. To go all the way to the back. The bread we share this day is safe.
Bring it into the earth is life.
The friendship we share this day is sacred.
All gatherings when people meet and touch celebrate life.
The laughter we share this day is sacred.
Joy and sorrow that arise from love are springs of life.
The stillness we share this day is sacred.
In this space is the haven for spirit which nourishes life.
For bread, for friends, for joy and sorrow, for the comfort of quietness, let us ever be grateful and caring. And now we get to do the activity, which actually there's no bread, but we have cookies and strawberries. Our activity today is to experience a potato chip, then a piece of fruit, then a cookie. First, in a moment, I'll have everyone come up and collect just one potato chip, one piece of fruit, and one cookie. I have the label for the potato chips and the cookies in case anyone wants to peek at them for food allergies. Please don't take something if you're allergic to it. And then once you have your foods, bring them back to your seats, but don't eat anything yet. And there's napkins here to put the foods on. So you can come up, whatever. Let me grab a fork. Now that everyone has their foods, we're going to start with the potato chip. Don't eat it yet. Take a look at it. Turn it around, it's different angles. Let me explain what I do before you start eating it. So don't eat it yet. But what you will do, you'll place a bit of it or the whole thing on into your mouth and see how it feels on your tongue. Maybe let it sit there a little bit. Then when you're ready, chew it slowly and pay attention to what you notice. And then when you're ready, swallow the potato. So now you're allowed to do it at your own pace and eat the potato chips. You're still in the middle of it. Feel free to continue. But you finished the experience. What did you notice? If anyone wants to share, is there anything you noticed while you were doing this? Something that surprised you, something that didn't surprise you? What did you experience in the moments of mindfully eating the food?
Transformation. Something very crunchy and very solid. Dry seed potato chip. Simply wonderful.
They're whole foods brand.
I always notice the texture.
Anything surprising or different in the texture or just?
No, just the potato chip. A classic potato chip.
It broke down more than I expected. When it finally broke down, it was much less food and again, what I expected. It seemed so much bigger when it was crispy, but you know, by the end of it, so.
When I first put it in my mouth, I was trying to do it slowly. I noticed that there was a flavor I don't normally experience with the potato chips right at the beginning. Saltier than usual than if I'm just sort of, you know, eating them.
Didn't really need to eat like 3 or 4 more.
Pay attention, yeah, that might be. I will say if I had chosen like Ruffles as opposed to like a lovely kettle cooked chip, more people might have been like. Like dissolved in your mouth, like
Or wanted,
what?
or wanted, yeah.
Next time. We're gonna do the piece of strawberry next. So the same situation. You're gonna take a look at the strawberry. And then put it into your mouth. Piece or the whole thing, I think how large it is. And then see how it feels on your tongue. Let it sit a little bit if you'd like, and then when you're ready, chew, pay attention to what you notice. And then swallow. Same question for everybody about the strawberry. This, we're eating. Surprise you or not?
It doesn't surprise me, but I never eat strawberries slowly. It's gone. It's
Were you able to eat it a little more slowly this time?
No. Nope. I just strawberries like.
Always see it. Margaret. I also noticed that it wasn't a real sweet strawberry, had a different flavor to it.
I was wondering how they would be, you never know, finding strawberries and.
I usually do the same as you, and pop in my mouth like potato chips, I'll eat strawberries down. By eating it slowly, I notice the seeds more, seeds kind of pop in my mouth. It's usually.
It didn't really have a strong flavor of its own until. Sorry, so
Yeah, I noticed the exact same thing, in comparison to the potato chip, which like immediately had salty flavor. Besides the fact that I had bit it in half, just a little bit from that, when I put it in my mouth, yeah. It didn't have really any flavor, even turning it around, so I tried. So. And last, we're going to do the same with the cookie. Which is, if you look at it, you'll see it's a fake Oreo, as my kids call it. It's also a Whole Foods. It's 365 brand. So take a look at it first, and then when you're ready, just follow the same process as before. You may want to break it in half, but no judgment. You toss the entire thing. So whenever you're ready, go ahead. reflections on the process of eating the cookie?
It distinctly does not taste like a milk Oreo. And I also noticed the frosting retains its characteristics the whole time. But the cookie kind of breaks down into a mush that is not a sense that I enjoy. But the frosting is really nice.
You didn't have to tell me it's not a real Oreo. Had you not told me, I would have known. The cookie has like a more of a weedy flavor
Yeah, it's good.
than normal Oreos. I did enjoy it. I am still enjoying it. But I find cookies very spiritual. I have a cookie a day, regardless,
It's just.
at least one.
This one's-
I did not eat a whole food.
I also noticed, I just took a quarter of it to start with. And I really didn't have to chew it. It just dissolved. Have it suckering.
Kind of split mine in two. So I took the side without frosting, put that in my mouth, and it kind of turned too much, it's dry. Kind of like grainy. And then I took the side with the frosting, that's much more enjoyable. Just give moisture to it.
As I was breaking the cookie up fingers, I realized, looking back, that this is how Cookie Monster eats cookies. You watch, he's breaking the cookie up with his fingers before they go in. So I realized Cookie Monster knows a lot more about cookies than I do, which intellectually I should have known. Wow.
That's that.
Because he's eating too many cookies. This should circle.
Very visible to you.
He's really a sweetheart. He's not really a monster.
Well, the experience of mindfully eating your food often gives surprising insights or explorations into the food that you're eating. And so I challenge you to try this one day with an entire meal. Slowly take bites and explore the different textures and flavors of your food as you get. You may discover something different about one of your favorite or not so favorite foods. You might find it especially interesting to do with something that you think you don't like or that you previously did not think. And maybe you still won't like it, but maybe you'll discover something new about it. That's our activity. So we will now please stand if you're willing and able, and we will sing Lake Now Night. Another of my favorite hymns. Please remain standing. And join in reading the words found in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the Lord of community, or the fire of conviction. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be seated.